Calling to order the special meeting of the Woburn School Committee for April 16th, 2025. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. I see we have a quorum. Could the superintendent please call the roll?
Mr. Austin.
Present.
Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Cormier.
Present.
Mr. Lipset.
Present.
Mr. Morenin.
Present.
Ms. Wetzel.
Present.
Ms. Crowley.
Present. All right, we're going to start our agenda, which is a short agenda tonight, so we can laser focus on the budget. So we're going to start off with public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the committee? Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Jennifer Jones, 4 Sherman Terrace. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm here to speak with regard to the school budget. At last week's meeting, Dr. Crowley shared that the mayor and some city council members had asked the school committee to reduce the budget increase by $1 million. I understand this is early in the process still, and I look forward to your deliberations about the budget. The brief discussion last week, though, revolved around contractual obligations and legal mandates of the school committee, and that the increases in next year's budgets are really tied to those obligations. And I have an active imagination, so these statements last week made it sound like, to me, that cuts to reduce the budget by $1 million would affect extracurricular programs that our kids are enrolled in. So I'm here tonight to speak about my family's favorite extracurricular activity, which is Woburn Band. Band is absolutely amazing. Not only do the most patient teachers on earth teach the kids how to play and appreciate music, but they also challenge the students to work hard and work together. Everyone is welcome in band. Starting in 4th grade, kids learn an instrument and join youth band. Youth mentors from middle school band and high school band work with these kids to encourage younger students to play together and to continue their musical interest for years to come. The middle schools have their own bands, which are way better than when I was in middle school. Additionally, the middle school students who show strong work ethic and interest are invited to participate in marching band with the high school. This is hard work for a middle schooler, and the way the kids grow in the program is absolutely unbelievable. Not only do they have to learn the routine, which is 7 minutes long, but they have to know the music by heart, and they have to hold their instruments up the entire time. I remember my daughter being completely overwhelmed after her first band practice, and she finished the year thrilled about her accomplishments and finishing the year playing on Fenway Park. In high school, band students work each day on marching band, concert band, or jazz band. They stay after school to master it. They spend their summer vacations building props for their competition shows. They become section leaders to strengthen the entire band. They aspire to lead the band as drum major during their senior year. These kids are athletes. They are talented. Their teachers and the students are the best of the Woburn Public Schools. I appreciate the statement by school committee member Andrew Lipset last week that $1 million won't matter much to each individual taxpayer as it's spread out across the city, but $1 million will mean a lot to a kid whose favorite program is cut, band or anything else. These kids have invested their time, sweat, and dreams in the programs that they take part in, and they persist, and they are learning to be strong leaders. I understand the pressure that you are under to cut, but I want you to consider the consequences to individual students whose favorite activity is taken away. I ask that you protect the arts and not touch Woburn's outstanding band program. And I also invite you all to Tanner Fest on May 3rd, where you can see the incredible Woburn Band. Thank you.
Ms. Jones. I forgot to mention that public comment is open to anyone in the public. You are being recorded. We have a 3-minute time frame, and please refrain from any direct attacks on Woburn Public School staff. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the committee?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't want to monopolize time. If anyone else would rather go first, that's fine too. But I'd like to at least give a bit of an overview of where we stand. I'd ask the indulgence, it might take more than 3 minutes.
We'll see. I'm just kidding. Given that this is the mayor of Woburn and this is, and budget is on the agenda, do I have a motion to,
Motion to suspend
enlarge the
the
time.
time limit on public comment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
You have the
you.
floor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
Nice
you
to
very
see you
much.
tonight.
Good to see you all. I'll try to be brief. I probably won't be, but I'll try. I just want to give a bit of an update on where we stand in the process and perhaps to clarify some of the concerns Ms. Jones alluded to there. So again, I want to be accurate, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we are in the process citywide of developing the fiscal year 26 budget. Obviously, one of the departments within the city, the biggest one, the biggest cost center, the most employees, is the school budget. But at the same time, you and we are developing the school budget for FY26. The same process is happening in each of the other city departments, every one of them, police, fire, DPW, library, recreation. Every department is going through this process. Obviously, it's a little bit different when we have an elected body in a significantly larger department, but essentially, it's the same process. They're developing the number that they want to submit for consideration into the overall city budget. So that process is happening. It's collaborative across the city. We're talking with each of the other department heads as they develop their number, but at some point, they're coming in now. We'll have everything on the table, including the number that this committee votes to send down to City Hall. It's collaborative in every instance, and I want the public to know that it's collaborative in this instance with the school committee. While you're doing your due diligence in creating your budget and making your decisions, whether it's in your finance subcommittee or one of your committee meetings, we're also having discussions between City Hall, your administrative team, your finance subcommittee chair. We're learning more about how you are building that budget, so we better understand it. Just today, we had a meeting. We've had a few now. We had a couple of city councilors. Councilor Viola was there. Because they're the ones who will ultimately be voting on this budget, it's helpful for them to see how it's being built and to understand why things are the way they are. So I appreciate that collaborative effort. We did this last year. It was my first time going through that process, but I'm very happy that we did it, and I think it worked. It led to the budget that we all agreed to and submitted, and the council voted on and approved, and we're executing this year, which I think is a solid budget for this district. I think we've made great strides, great investments. We're seeing them bearing fruit every day. Every time we go into one of the schools, we see those dollars in action, and we're confident that it was a good investment. So that's why I like that process. It's a bit modified this year. Now I'm into my second year. We understand a little better how things work. There isn't quite as much digging and research to understand where your numbers are coming from. But we're still going through that process, and I'm appreciative of that. We had a good meeting today, and there'll be more, and I want that to continue. So where we are right now is gathering up those numbers, and I'm expecting that you'll likely vote tonight on what you want your number to be, and then that'll come into the pot, and we'll make some decisions. They'll be collaborative, they'll be iterative, we'll be going back and forth with Alex and Matt and whomever you'd like before any decisions are made. And again, that's happening throughout the city. In terms of the expected or desired $1 million cut, I just want to be clear on that. So while you were preparing your numbers and we were getting ready for meetings in which Alex would give presentations and would try to see where we thought we stood, we were doing a little bit of rough math at City Hall based on what we had invested in the school budget for FY25 and what we thought the built-in year-over-year increases would likely look like. And when I say built-in, I mean contractual obligations. And I was viewing all of this through the lens of what I describe as a maintenance budget. In other words, last year, we all swallowed hard and made significant, necessary, beneficial investments. I don't think any of us want to see any slippage. We don't want to fall backwards. We don't want to lose the things that we did. So if you see it the way I see it, a maintenance budget means all the things we did last year continue, and then on top of that are the necessary, required increases by contract, by state regulation, et cetera. So the rough math we were doing at City Hall, and it was very rough, and it was in anticipation of getting real numbers, led me to somewhere in the area of 5 to 5.9 million. So when we had our meeting 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and the rough draft preliminary number that came in was 6.9 million, I made the statement that I was expecting a number that would be lower than that, understanding that I may not have the full grasp of the implications of those contractual obligations. Things like cost of living increases, stipend adjustments, steps, licensing adjustments, all of those things make it more than a simple cost of living adjustment year over year. And I was doing rough math on what I thought all that might look like. And the number that I was operating on was essentially a $5.9 million year-over-year increase. So when I saw the 6.9, I just made the statement, I thought it might have been $1 million less. We all agreed that we would dig deep and sharpen the pencils and look and see. Let's start with the notion of or an agreement as to the terms of what a maintenance contract looks like. Let's see what that number is. And then if there's additional things that we can discuss, they may fall under the category of maintenance as well. Like they're so incredibly important to what we're trying to maintain, we need to hire one more teacher. Well, okay, let's have the discussion about whether that's the expanded definition of maintenance budget. So that was the context of that discussion about, are we $1 million over? And to be clear, I'm not asking to cut $1 million from the agreed upon FY25 budget. What we're talking about is how much we go above that. Is it 5 million? Is it 6 million? We're not sure yet, but it's not a cut. And again, that maintenance lens really matters to me, and that's what I'd like us to be thinking of here. So that's where we are in the process. We had a meeting today where the team came in and presented, which I believe Alex is going to present now, the result of that discussion, the sharpening of pencils, and I guess the next step in the process, and I appreciate that. So I just wanted to make sure we understood the context. And so as of right now, tonight, that's where we stand with the city budget and the school budget. And when you take your next steps and you vote on what you believe should be the number sent to City Hall, we'll continue that collaborative, iterative process and get to the number that we as a city can live with for the schools and for every department in the city. Okay?
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank
Would you, Mr. Mayor, would you be willing to stay for the presentation?
Yes.
And engage with us in a robust discussion about our budget after?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come before the committee? No. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. And we'll move on with the agenda to reports and presentations of superintendent and staff. I believe, Dr. Crowley, you have a budget update for us.
Sure. So at the last meeting, we presented publicly a 7.65%.
Threw me off.
7.65% increase. Tonight, we're presenting a 6.58% increase. We have made some reductions and some restructuring in the budget, but I really will turn to Alex to run through the changes and also the budget itself. I think the committee members all have a hard copy of the presentation, and so without further ado, give it to Alex.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Crowley. So first and foremost, thanks to everyone in the room for a collaborative and thoughtful budget cycle thus far. This is a process that started for me as early as October, November, with visits to each of the individual schools and really getting to understand the needs of the building leadership district-wide. So this budget before you today is a result of a several months-long collaborative effort and ongoing effort to both address those needs and to do so in a way that is both fiscally and that is fiscally responsible. So as I scroll through the budget document, you'll notice a table of contents which outlines the overall budget document, including the letter from Superintendent Crowley and our strategic vision. So this letter reinforces the strategic vision of Woburn Public Schools, which was really the backbone in building this budget, and namely, we prioritized the following key areas: enhanced collaboration, consistent implementation, and building robust tiered systems of support. So the budget timeline, it really outlines a 4-month plus long timeline of date and events between meeting with principals, administration, the collaborative effort with department heads, and many, many finance subcommittee meetings and administrative meetings that have taken place thus far. And so, as Dr. Crowley alluded to, the budget that we sit here with tonight is at 6.58%. That budget represents about a $5.9 million increase year over year, and that total proposed budget is $96,310,543. So I know over the past couple months I have taken deep dives into this budget drivers chart, but it does bear repeating. And I'd like to start with some good news first. It's been well documented, the general ed transportation. In going out to bid early in the budget season on this, we were able to obtain a favorable contract which saw a reduction of 10% or about $200,000 in general ed transportation year over year. One of the changes since the last meeting in getting down about $1 million, I think it was $900,000 or so, was the electricity line. One of the benefits of several system repairs that have been made during FY25, which is a testament to that investment that we made during FY25 in our building, is that we were able to do some system repairs, including some repairs to solar panels, and those systems are now more efficiently consuming electricity, thereby reducing the cost. Additionally, district-wide load shedding and the recent rate adjustment by DPU has all contributed to us being able to reduce this line by about $300,000 for FY26. We also saw, or will see, decreases in the curriculum line. These have largely been repurposed to continue our investment in reading interventionists. I've said this from the beginning, and going back to October, November, the number one thing that I heard district-wide was to maintain, at the elementary level specifically, it was to maintain the interventionists that we invested in last year. You'll see later in the budget some pictures of sort of those interventionists engaging with kids and being able to see that live. I'm sure as Dr. Crowley and the mayor have seen on their Friday walk-arounds, it's been a great investment for the kids. So, with all the good news out of the way, what is it that's actually driving this budget? Similar to last year, it's salaries. Our salaries represent contractual obligations, including a 3% COLA year over year, plus steps, plus longevity, and that accounts for about 67% of the year-over-year increase. The next biggest piece of the pie is special ed transportation. This year, we saw a $900,000 increase, which was driven largely by the NRT buses going up over 20%, and that accounts for an additional 15% of the year-over-year increase. The next biggest piece of the bucket is the newly arrived grant. Last year, we had an offset of $600,000. With those funds set to expire, we need to take that offset out of the budget, which is an increase of $600,000 or about an additional 10%. The remaining increases relate to personnel additions made during the year based on enrollment and required service needs, an increase in the substitute line, which is aimed at addressing building assistance, especially at the elementary level, rising costs of our 403B annuity program, building service line increases, which again, we saw as an investment last year, thereby reducing the electricity line, sick leave buyback retirements for 20-plus retirements that we have at the end of this fiscal year, and then some nominal increases to special education for both vision and hearing increased needs, and then some professional services as well in special education. As I continue to scroll through this budget, what you'll see is that this chart kind of illustrates what what that graph did graphically. These are the numbers put in a chart so that you can see the dollars and cents as well as the percentages. As I move along, you'll also see a budget narrative that will say in words much of what I have already said, but it kind of lays out exactly what those budget drivers are. As you continue on, there's a particular special ed supplemental budget information. This lays out 4 years of historical numbers for out-of-district tuitions, special education transportation, vision and hearing, and our extended school year programs, which are some of the biggest drivers of that department. Shifting from budget drivers to the major components. So major components is looking at FY26 sort of in a vacuum, whereas the budget drivers was that 5.9 million number, what's driving that. So once again, the major components is going to be largely salary driven, accounting for over 76% of the overall salary. It's important to note this does include 11 additional FTEs this year, which includes 3 mandated special education positions, 4 additional elementary school teachers, 1 associate AP at the high school, 1 central registrar, and 1 staff member in central registration as we look to build out a central registration location. It also does include 1 assistant superintendent for finance and operations. The next line down is transportation, which accounts for 7% of the overall increase, and this includes homeless, special education, and general ed transportation. Moving on down, we see that out-of-district accounts for 6% of the overall increase. This was another area from the $1 million where we were able to trim quite significantly, due in large part to being able to prepay some of these tuitions for next year. So that number saw about a $400,000 decrease. So when we talk about the $900,000 that we were able to trim from the budget, $700,000 of that is largely due to the electricity line coming down and prepaying these out-of-district tuitions. So a large part of that is just from 2 lines, plus a handful of others that I can get into a little bit later. As we move on down, the utilities account for another 2%, and really this leaves about 9% of the remaining budget for supplies and other operational costs, including custodial and maintenance and technology support. So continuing on, we see some great artwork by some of our students. And then we get into the budget summary. So this budget summary, I know it's small on this will be online at some point, but basically what you'll see is by department, you're going to see the individual, the aggregate salaries as well as the operating costs. And then on the far right, you'll see the dollar increase in that department as well as the percentage increase year over year. And then at the very bottom, you will see the dollar amount, which is $96,310,543, which again represents a 6.58% increase year over year. The next item down is a FTE summary. So this will break out both by dollar amount and FTE, the positional totals that make up this budget, and as a total percentage of the budget, what those salaries are. So the second to left column is the percentage of total salaries. So that's the percentage just of the total salaries, which is that 73 million number, versus on the right, you're going to see the percentage of the total budget, which is that $96 million number. And then as we continue on, we get into the sort of core of this budget. And as I alluded to earlier, we see our great reading interventionists on what I believe is Read Across America Day, based on the Dr. Seuss hat. And we see some sort of great pictures that have been taken of our kids engaging with the great people that, help run our schools and do a lot of the tough work that they do day in and day out. Now, I won't go through the next 60 pages in depth, but I kind of do want to give an overview of what you're going to see sort of if you did go through it by one department. So as a group, you'll see a message from the elementary principals, which speaks to what's included in their budget. You'll see a list of those principals and a list of the schools. And then you'll get into the actual core of the budget. So this is going to give you the position, the total salary for that position, all the way down. It'll give the total salary for the department. And then on the next page, and this is going to be the same throughout, so whether you're at the Alta Vista or when you get to the high school, in any of those lines, you'll see this. So the next will be a breakdown of the positional total. You'll see a 3-year history going back to FY24 of what that salary has been. On the far right column, you're going to see a percentage increase, which represents the percentage year over year of that particular line. And then when you get down to the line total, you'll see very similar, like office supplies in FY26 actually saw a little bit of a decrease there as a percentage of the total. That number looks maybe larger as a percentage because the office supply line as a whole is such a small number at some of the smaller elementary schools. So that being said, this continues on for about 60 pages. I am more than happy to answer any questions or dive into any of these in total. Just for the public, if you were to be scrolling through this document, it goes elementary, middle, high school. You then get into the departmental budgets, which would be HR, administration, student services, curriculum, special education, technology, facilities, and I think that I nailed all of them, but if not, those would be included in there as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bizio. Dr. Crowley?
First of all, Alex, thank you. There's a lot of moving parts that contribute to making this document, and I appreciate the effort that Alex and his team put into to getting this together for tonight. I think one of the things we tried to do was move beyond just a slideshow, like static slides. I mean, this is a slideshow, but to provide the backup information. But I wanted just to say thanks, but also to see if I can. I know who I'm with, and so I can see Maureen looking to jump in. So
Yes, Dr. Ryan?
So there's a lot of moving parts. There is one piece on here that I can quickly see needs a little bit of clarification, and perhaps we can add it in to the next round. But on the
Page 10.
on the special education supplemental budget information, we can see the out-of-district tuitions year to year. I wish I could say we were in fact going from 9.8 down to 5.8. But we're not. What is not there, so that is in fact the correct budget line, that is accurate. What this does not reflect, however, is the offsets which come in from circuit breaker and from the 240 grant. So the special ed budget line, we are in fact level funding, which is wonderful. I think we've seen the results of all of the hard work of our teachers and paraprofessionals and the positions that we were able to staff over the past year. And we have been educating more students in district, and we have had some students return to district, and we have had some students graduate. There was, in fact, roughly a 7% tuition increase with our collaborative. So even after incorporating that, we were able to level fund the number that is actually in the operating budget, and that is not reflected on this line. So I'm going to just make a note that we should put a little asterisk, and we can note what the offset is. But I saw that right away. Wishful thinking.
So, Dr. Ryan, you're referring to page 10 in the out-of-district tuitions under where it says fiscal year 26. So So we can anticipate an amendment or more information with an asterisk and detailing why that number reads 5803646?
That is an accurate
Okay.
number for the operating budget.
Right,
It
okay.
just does not reflect the offsets, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan, for clarifying. So I think what we'll do now is I'll ask the committee if they have any questions for Mr. Dizio or Dr. Crowley with regards to the presentation. I do want to thank Mr. Dizio and his team, for everyone that did any work on this whatsoever. It's obviously very comprehensive and well done, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I'll open it up for questions from the committee. At this point, Mr. Mayor, would you like to rejoin us? As we may have questions for you as well. Really appreciate it, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions or commentary from the committee.
Well, I'll start. Everybody did receive the list of things that we cut from the budget that we had. I mean, I truly was under the impression that we had to cut $1 million, otherwise I think some of these things would have slid by and stayed in the budget a little bit more, but we did our best to meet what we were asked to do. We're pretty damn close, pretty close to what we need to do. So I think that what's been presented to the administration, we did have a meeting on finance and went through each one of these lines, and we have some conversation to be had, but I think that there's enough that we've heard that I would support what has been given to us and see what everybody else has. But there's been a lot of hours put into this, especially from the admin team. And Alex, sleep is not something that they've had a lot of lately, so I just really want to say I appreciate everything that they have done, but I'm sure there'll be questions when everybody reviews that. I believe everybody got that last Friday or whatever we sent it, so that everybody could take a peek at that, so we'll have something before us before getting to the table.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chisholm. So Finance Subcommittee went through the budget and squeezed the lemon? Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. Appreciate it. Thank you, Vice Chair Chisholm. Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just echo what Ms. Chisholm was talking about, it was Monday, Pat, I forget what day it was, we had the Finance Subcommittee meeting, and Mr. Dizio and the team presented us lots of figures that we have presented to us again tonight. But I think the takeaway from a lot of that was there was no personnel and no programs being eliminated, cut, disposed of, or anything like that. So I think the history goes back, and Mr. Dizio could talk about some of the line items that he kind of researched and went through, and where the money's coming from and where it's going to, and what we used, what we didn't need. And he really backed it up a lot with a lot of proof as to the number that he had. But the impressive part was, we're not sitting here tonight saying, oh, we've got a layoff of X amount of people. We're going to do away with X amount of programs, as other communities around us are doing. And again, to Mrs. Chisholm's point, it's, again, the mayor, it's kind of a draft, but we're trying to get there. I agree, I think we're there. I think it needs a little more tweaking perhaps, but I think the research and the effort behind everybody's work to get us this far is exemplary, to get us a little bit past what the mayor is referring to as maintenance, but it's doable with a lot of sacrifices. So I just want to make sure that point's heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan. Mr. Lipset?
So I too was in the Finance Subcommittee meeting that went through the adjustments that were made. And I wonder, Dr. Ryan, if you might be able to go into a little more detail on the offsets. I think that's something that the committee would benefit from understanding, and the public would benefit from understanding. I'm hesitant to sort of give the impression that we can sort of magically find some money. I mean, this is due to your hard work, due to long-term planning, and it is sort of pulling from funds that we were setting aside for sort of rainy day type stuff. So I wonder if you could go into a little bit more detail there.
So I'd say the largest offset that we have is the circuit breaker. And the circuit breaker offset that we will see for next year is $4,523,469. And that will immediately be applied to the budget line. Circuit breaker is something that we actually file it twice a year. Some districts file it once. But it allows us, by having the numbers sooner, it allows us to budget more accurately. And we have a shout out to Jane O'Connor and Kim Miles that really helped me during a very, very busy March to get our circuit breaker in. We do a really nice job with the submission, and we really try to get every penny back because it is reimbursement and it's money that comes back to the city, and it goes directly towards offsetting the tuitions. So we are working off of a carryover that is 4.5 million approximately with that. We also have allocations from grant money that we have been sort of earmarking for special education tuitions, out-of-district tuitions, that is also there to be applied, and that's approximately $750,000. And again, we've done really well at working with our students in district, and we're in a good place. We watch the tuitions very closely and carefully, and the city has also, Mr. Dory has worked with me quite a bit just in terms of communicating. I know that the city maintains a stabilization fund of just over $1.8 million, and so we do a lot of planning because out of districts are very difficult to plan. If a family moves in tomorrow, we will have a tuition tomorrow. And so it's one of those things where we really try to analyze it and watch it carefully. But so we have offsets that I will add in a little asterisk, and you will see that. But we have planned very appropriately, and I feel very comfortable with where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lipset. Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Did you have anything more?
I'm good for now.
For now, okay. Ms. Cormier?
Thank you. With regard to those grants, is there a document that reflects how those grants are used in a similar way that we have this budget? Is there some way that we can see?
So we actually did review them at a finance meeting. It was maybe a month ago, I want to say. We went through the different pieces. I'm happy to also share that with you.
Yeah, the documents that we went through, both, all of the grants and everything in them, and so we're happy to share the
That would be great. Thank you.
Everything in them.
Awesome. And secondly, Mr. Mulrennan mentioned there were no layoffs. Was that your statement?
No reductions, some movement around in personnel, so there may be some people that have been replaced or retirements that were needed.
Okay, because I did notice it reduced cultural specialists existing and the personnel ask on the second page of the budget changes, so that is one person that is no longer.
The administration has an explanation for that, which was brought up on Monday as well. I don't know who wants to address it, but
I just wanted to make it clear that not everybody is walking away with their job. Thank you.
Ms. Cormier. Did you want the administration to explain that?
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Could they explain the move of the cultural
Yeah.
specialist?
So in the budgeting process, the initial request from the high school was an assistant principal, an additional assistant principal. That back in December, maybe to that, and then in conversation, the request was, well, maybe that might be too much money, so can we add an additional culture specialist? So the person that is filling the culture specialist job this year, that is grant funded, so that is not in the operating budget, and that grant expires. And so we had to move that person into the budget. In recent conversations with the high school administration, that the leadership team feels that they would like to go back to that assistant principal model. They feel like it would be a better use of funds for the management and operations of the school. It's not a reflection of the person who's doing the job. It's just a function of what the needs of the school are and the desire to have one AP per grade, for example, to be able to do discipline, parent meetings, etc., to better support everybody at the high school. So that was the background of that.
And was that was discussed, I didn't see 4 assistant principals in here, right? Was that after this was printed?
That's also at the end of that document, the associate principal.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right.
Yeah, the budget
I did notice
changed.
that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cormier, for asking that. Anything else? Ms. Wetzel?
Hi. First, just thank you to everyone who worked on it. It's a lot of people, so I won't name everybody, but thank you. This was awesome, too. The pictures, I think, are really nice to see. Instead of just looking at the numbers, I think that's a really nice touch, along with the letters and such. So thank you for putting that in there. I did want to point out a couple things, actually, that I noticed kind of as we were talking. I think a lot of the new hires that we've done, or hires in general, have actually, yes, they do cost us more money, but they also help us save money. For instance, Rania, our ML director, was able to get a grant for new curriculum, and you'll notice in our budget that there was a decrease in curriculum. So I think that it's important, as we're looking at this budget line, that these budgets, the people play off of each other, and where you might see an expense in one area, you're going to see a savings in another, specifically when it pertains to staff members, which I know is our biggest line item on here. And it was mentioned, too, the walkabouts that we do on Friday. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to see where our budget in action, our teachers in action, our staff in action, and really see how the reading specialists and all these other wonderful positions that we were able to add and or already have are making a difference every day in our students' lives. So it's really important, and I'm very happy to see none of those staff removals. I did have a question, though, looking at some of the ways we're funding certain positions, like grants, for instance. What happens when that grant runs out and we need that position? What does that look like from a budget perspective?
So I would tell you that annually, and actually we had this conversation today, the federal grants that we get, Title I, II, III, and IV, we rely on them largely. And so we are optimistic that they stay, but as we're budgeting right now, that's something that we're trying to be cognizant of. I gave you the example of the culture specialist that was put into a grant that if we need to move towards operationalizing that, we will. One of the things that we've done, and Dr. Ryan's done a nice job with staffing her department through grants. The 240 grant is one of the biggest grants we have. You'll see in one of the adjustments that we made, we moved a GAIN teacher from the operating budget into the 240 for next year. You're not supposed to stay in grants forever. Theoretically, Title I would be the only place that you can and should operationalize your system through grants, but the intent of a grant is to supplement, not supplant. And so we need to be cognizant of that as we budget. And so one of the things, as I think to ESSER monies that we've had in the past, that we've grant funded through ESSER a significant number of positions. And I say that because I'm grateful to the city. In last year's budget, we maintained a lot of those positions. And so a lot of the increase from last year's budget were grant-funded positions that the city recognized were important positions, reading specialists, as an example, that we were able to maintain and roll into this year's operating budget. So it is something that we review every year. I don't know if that answered it, or...
Yeah, I think...
Can I add a little bit that might clarify it even further? The special education grants are federal grants, and I think we all know that there's been a lot happening with federal grants these days. And so I would say this is probably the budget cycle that I've lost the most sleep over, and it isn't because we're not in a good position. I think we're in a better position than we ever have been, frankly, with respect to the special education. What I worry about and what I've been trying very hard to plan for is if the grants go away. And the amount in the grants is very significant. And it would mean we would need to sit down at a table and have discussions. However, having said that, we are in a position right now where we have planned and we would be able to work through the immediate future with it. The positions that I generally put in the 240 and or 262 grant, which is the early childhood, if I put positions in them, I try very hard to choose positions, for example, that have very small class sizes, positions that are not, that may or may not continue. Special ed classes, we often need to add classrooms, and so one that is carried, that I am planning for next year, is a classroom that we had to add this year. And I believe that, you know, we have the funding there, but I try to look at strategically what goes into the grants, and then I will move that person into the operating budget in the next cycle, is what will happen. And so I'm trying very hard just to minimize the risk and to be very, very thoughtful about those funds and how they're used, so that if they do go away, we can, you know, we can make it through the year, and then again move the individual into the operating budget.
Got it. That makes sense. So it's really, we just sort of are mindful and we keep track of who those people are, and then we move them forward to the next year, essentially.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question. I know our out-of-district placement rate, like the number of students has gone down, and we've been able to bring students back home, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But I know the out-of-district tuitions still increase. But I'm wondering, I guess my question, because we have like our assessment center, we have all these wonderful programs here. How much, if we can put a number on, what are we saving for keeping kids here just for even just assessment purposes versus sending them somewhere else?
Sure. So we're saving an awful lot of money. I would say, though, just to back up a step, as of today, we have one fewer child out of district than we did a year ago today. However, that doesn't mean there's only been movement of one child. In special education, one of the things we've had quite a handful go out. I would say probably 5 in the past month. However, what happens is that some kids come back, some kids go out. This year we did have a number of students. You don't always know in special education when a student will graduate. Students age out at 22. And so there's often, once a student is in the 12th grade, it gets challenging to plan when the student will actually be ready to leave the system. This year we did have a larger number of students that were ready to graduate and take their diplomas, and that actually freed up a lot of bandwidth in the line, so to speak. So even though we've had a reasonable amount that have gone out of district, we have still been able to maintain so that we're just under. But to answer your question, a student in the assessment center would typically have a tuition of approximately $120,000 a year and a transportation bill of anywhere from $40,000 and up. Transportation can vary widely based on whether a child can go on a vehicle with others and a route is split, or whether it's an individual vehicle. In fact, we recently did a transportation analysis and talked about how in some cases the transportation can actually be more than the cost of the out-of-district tuition. That does happen. But so for students, and when you look at the investments that you make with respect to all of our programs, whether it be our RISE classrooms, our PALS, our GAIN, our SOAR, any of them, any one of those students, if they go out of district, could quite easily have $150,000 tuition, cost to it. So even though some of the budgets and the people that we bring in, it feels like a lot every year, the reality is that long term, it's keeping our students in the community, which is another significant benefit for the students, and it is also saving an astronomical amount of money.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. It is, I think it's both. It's better for the student to be in their backyard, to be going to school with their peers, and then it's saving us a ton of money. It's not even the cost of one teacher in the assessment center or any of our specialty programs, or kids on IEPs that might need specialty service providers for services inside of the classroom or push-out services outside. So I thank you for that. And then just lastly, I just agree with Ms. Baker-Jones's comments earlier. I think all of the extracurricular activities that we have inside of our schools, both band and things that happen after school are so important and something that kids look forward to and they need, and it's just as important as going into a math or history class as it is going into a band class. So thank you so much for saying that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wetzel. Anything else? Mr. Austin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually want to go back to the conversation about the cultural specialists. I feel like we just kind of glossed over it very briefly. I would like to hear more about the reasoning. I understand that it was stated that the school wants to go, the admin team wants to go in a different direction. They would like to have, I guess, a principal or assistant principal for each grade level. Can you speak more on that? Because from my understanding, there's already 4 assistant principals currently with Ratchet being added most recently. So can you explain more about how the admin team wants to go in a different direction and lose a culture specialist at the high school?
Sure. I guess there's 3 assistant principals at the high school now, and the principal. Nobody wants to lose any position. I think that's one of the things that's important to say. I think one of the pieces of feedback from the admin team at the high school has been they would need 5 or 8 more culture specialists to make that position more effective, because there's a genuine need for that position. One of the things that they feel is that the ability for, and to be clear, they're calling it an associate principal, so that the principal would have an associate principal and then 3 APs. The associate principal kind of would be the person in charge of the building should the principal not be there. So there would be a clear delineation of chain of command. That principal position would be filled by someone licensed. They would be able to evaluate, they would be able to suspend, they would be able to help the management and operations and take on additional responsibilities. I think the intent of the culture specialist is and was great. And like I said, it's not a reflection on the person or the job they're doing. It's trying to meet the overall sentiment of the high school and their feedback to help the high school meet the needs of the student population day to day next year.
Thank you for that. Well, it sounds to me that this decision was admin directed, not student facing, not student directed. It was a decision made not with the students in mind. You mentioned the assistant principal, we eval and suspend. Maybe we need less suspension. What I do know is when I spent time with this cultural specialist, this individual was not just there for the black kids. This gentleman knew everybody in the school. When we think of the word culture, culture means a shared belief, custom, behavior of a people group. And that is exactly what he was doing. He was connected with every people group. He was connected with kids that had disabilities. He was connected with kids from the LGBTQ community. So he was connecting with all people. And so to let this individual go, that's going to be a huge detriment to the school. And I feel like with the way our city is going right now, dealing with swastikas and disrespectful racist words in the class, in the excuse me, in the bathroom. And so I'm a little disappointed in this direction, considering that we do have a diverse school population, and we have, less than 1% of the staff of color, and we want to let go the additional staff that is reflecting our students. To me, that is a disservice to our students. We're supposed to be supporting our students. This is not supporting our students. This is supporting admin. We've had, if I'm not mistaken, we've had 3 assistant principals for as long as I can remember. Maybe you can tell me I'm wrong. But it's always been head principal, 3, from my understanding. And now we want a 4th. I don't know if that's going to make things better. I don't know if those principals are going to be more student-facing, because currently, I don't believe they are. From the students that I've talked to, including my son, most of the time, principals don't even know the kids' names. This individual, not only does he know the kids' names, he has a special handshake for many of the kids. This is from observation. This is not from hearsay. This is what I've seen. So you may hear a little frustration in my voice because I'm adamant. I'm passionate about this position. I fought for it when it first came about, and now 2 years, like, oh, let's get rid of him. Let's get rid of the position. Not only get rid of this position, let's get rid of the position that could have came also. You mentioned that we need 8 to make it more effective. Why don't we keep the 1 and maybe add a 2 and give that person some assistance? Give him some help, because he's doing a great job. So I can't get behind that, and I know it's not my choice and my decision to decide how the school moves and what you guys do, but I just got to voice myself. This is not okay with me. There's going to be some. This is me speaking, being real. The kids are not gonna take this lightly. I do know that. This person has been there 2 years building, and you're gonna let them go, and the kids don't know. It's not gonna make the atmosphere of the school better. The kids of color are gonna be upset. I do know that. So I hope you guys can retract this, because this is very upsetting to me. I'm really not happy about this. I had to say that. I don't know what else to say, otherwise I'm going to be repeating myself and end up rambling. But I am not happy that this position has been treated as if it was nothing, moving a different direction, as if this person did not do a good job. Is that what I'm hearing, that did he not do a good job? Help me understand that, please.
So again, I've said this has nothing to do with his job performance.
So this is more to give more power to eval and suspend and kids. That's what I'm understanding?
I would also suggest that the associate principal would be involved in curriculum instruction, helping to support the classroom teachers, department heads. There's layers of people at the high school that would benefit from this position. That was the conversation that was had at the high school with the leadership team, and this is where they landed as the need.
So can you talk again why this person was hired, the culture specialist, and help me understand, like, if this person was hired for this particular reason and now this position is being eliminated? So can you please help me understand that?
I think the position was hired through a grant last year to try to help with some of the we call them Tier 1 discipline, so kids being late to class, wandering the hallways, etc. And to your point, this person is very good and effective and well-liked at the high school, but the assistant principals and principal feel like there's better value in having an additional assistant principal or associate principal in that position. So it's not job performance related.
I'm just trying to make a point here. So if I'm not mistaken, this position was not in order to have the person build connection with the students of color, in order to bridge. Was that, I mean, from my understanding, that's the point of this position, at least a part of it. And so it's almost like taking this position away, it's like we don't need that no more. We don't need to bridge with the students of color. So help me understand that. Make it make sense to me.
I don't think we ever said we were hiring somebody specifically designated to meet the needs of students of color. We always hired to meet the needs of all students.
So culture specialist, so that culture had nothing to do, as in the people group, I guess we go back to that. I'm just, maybe I need a pause. I'm just not really happy right now about this. This is really upsetting.
Mr. Austin, I'll just make a suggestion as the chair. You can make a motion.
You got to walk me through this, madam.
It's okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to add the cultural specialist back into the budget.
Okay, I have a motion to add the cultural specialist back into the budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second on that motion. Any deliberation on that motion? Ms. Wetzel?
Question, if we were to add the cultural specialist back in, we would also keep the additional principal as well? And that wouldn't change, correct?
I believe the motion is to add the cultural specialist back in.
And not take, okay.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, to Mr. Austin's point in his motion, from my understanding for finance, because these same questions you're giving us tonight, Mr. Austin, were brought up, because there's also a central registry person, an assistant superintendent, and the associate principal. So where does all this come in? So when the associate principal comes out, the job description, the roles and responsibilities, some of those roles and responsibilities, as the superintendent's indicating, will involve cultural matters, curriculum matters, attendance matters, all the same things that the curriculum person has been doing with added other responsibilities is what we're being told in finance. And it's still a work in progress as to, obviously, you have to pass the budget first before you can advertise such a position to support the administration up there. And, hopefully, to your point, the person would be, same licenses and cultural things, associate, whatever degrees that the teacher would get, associate principal would get, and some of their roles and responsibilities would lie upon some of the cultural things you're discussing tonight. So that was why it was brought up in finance.
So the rebuttal on that, I guess, that individual can work alongside with that assistant principal. If that's what that person's coming to do, give that person support. We just heard that we need more. So there's power in numbers. So why don't we move forward and allow that to be?
Mr. Lipset?
So, as we talked about in finance, I think one of the pressures that contributed to this was the belief that we had to reduce our budget ask by approximately $1 million. The culture specialist positions and the associate principal were, if not exactly cost neutral, fairly close to cost neutral, and that was one of the contributing factors for the reduction of both positions with the addition of the associate principal. Mr. Mayor, I'm hearing you tell us today that there was not actually a request to reduce by $1 million. Is that correct?
To be clear, the discussion about the 6.9 million down to 5.9 million was based on my understanding of what the maintenance budget would look like.
Okay.
What does the math yield to have everything we had last year and simply accounting for the increases based on contract, et cetera?
So it was more of an estimate from yourself and Mr. Doherty about what you expected rather than a request of the school department to reduce to that amount.
Yeah, but we continued that conversation today with an even better understanding of what the maintenance number actually looks like.
Right.
And, the maintenance year over year, from July 1, 24 to July 1, 25, that figure, starting in July, is 5.6%, and the number would have been 5 million. We have to add in the other factors, and this is complicated, but that's where our math was starting from. Somewhere between 5 and 6 million was what we expected a maintenance budget to look like. As I've said, how we define maintenance matters. I'm telling you how I defined it. If the school committee says, in order to maintain everything we had last year and account for, these contractual increases, we also need to make sure that we have, 3 more special ed teachers. Okay, then we can talk about whether that's the right way to define maintenance. But to be clear, I wasn't saying it doesn't matter what your 6.9 million consists of, go cut $1 million. What I was saying is, to paraphrase Mr. Austin, make it make sense to me. What does a maintenance budget mean to you? And respectfully, prove it to me. And that's where this 5.9 figure comes from. again, we had a good but rushed meeting today to try to elaborate on what maintenance looks like, but it sounded to me like the 5.9 figure you got to represents a maintenance budget. I won't delve into the particulars of what you're talking about now, but that was the takeaway from today's meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I appreciate that. I'm asking only in the context of this discussion as we sort of talk
Yeah.
about the cost of replacing or re-adding in this position. So given that and given the potential, I guess flexibility is the wrong word, but certainly continual negotiation on what that looks like, I'd be willing to support this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lipset. Ms. Cormier?
Thank you. So I remember this position was added from a grant. And then, is this the first time it's being added to the budget?
Yes.
Or from the operating? Okay. I also recall, I guess, the way that I defined cultural specialist, and it may be Mr. Rassinen as well, it was not a culture particular to a group of students. It was the school culture as a whole that was looking to be improved, and that was part of what this individual was being brought in for. And I agree that he did some great work, and I would like to see him continue that. If for some reason this motion isn't brought forward, I think that ideally if there was somewhere else for him to land within the Woburn Public Schools, I think he is an asset. But I just wanted to sort of give my thoughts on the position. Thank you.
Ms. Cormier. Any further deliberation on the motion? Vice Chair Chisholm?
I just, only because I hate to see anybody lose their job or, get let go from the school, but we have to also rely on people that are inside the building to let us know what they need to make it better. And, when we're looking at positions that we don't have an unlimited amount of money, and we're trying to make it balance and work the best that we can possibly do. And if we bring on the associate principal, they can also help with evaluation of teachers and give teachers extra time in the classroom that they could work with them. The cultural specialist cannot do that. The associate principal can take kids and do discipline. He cannot do that. So there's things that high school needs a good look at and a deep dive. And I'm hoping that the new person would be able to do that. And when we're looking at numbers that we have to meet, there's tough times, and we have to make some of these adjustments. So it's not against any one person. There are other rejections in here too. But switching around in places that we can do and putting people back in grants. And anybody that's in a grant knows that position, if the grant does go, that position's in jeopardy. And that's always been known to everybody that's been in a grant. So I just want to let you, understand that this is, we sit here as a board, but we're not in the high school every single day and see the needs of it. And we have a new, interim principal up there, and this is what he is asking for. And I just think we need to respect that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chisholm.
Ms. Wetzel can go first.
Are you sure, Mr. Austin?
I'm okay.
Okay. Ms. Wetzel and then Mr. Austin.
I'll be brief. I do think we're still saying, respecting the needs of the principal, because we're going to keep the assistant principal in the budget. We're just adding additional person, not even adding because he's already there, but continuing to keep an additional person there at the high school. That's just another layer of support. And Mr. Lipset said it last week, we're by 135,000-ish is what the salary is, I think. It's such a small number compared to this big number that is our budget. We're not adding millions of dollars here. We're adding a bleep on the radar. And this discussions are still continuing, so I think to put this staff member back into the budget, especially at this time, makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot going on at the high school. We've saw the letter from Superintendent Crowley today. If we can provide more level of support, especially in these areas, then that's what this person was hired to do. This, as well as I remember it being really sold to as a discipline and making sure things are sort of flowing nicely. Because initially we weren't even calling it a culture specialist. We are calling it something else, and I can't remember. But I think this position has grown to something really nice. And as Mr. Austin said, the students really respect him and are able to have wonderful, open conversations, which is very important, especially at that level. So I certainly support putting this back in.
Mr. Austin?
Thank you. So I've had conversation with Principal Rassinen in the past, and I believe he came before us and mentioned the same thing, that He said, of the issues that our students face, admin, as in principals, hear about 20% of the 80% is missing. And so this is kind of when the conversation that I mentioned to him that I can possibly start having conversations with students. Because I know when I was younger, principals were the last person that I wanted to talk to about an issue. So adding another principal, there's a good chance that our students are not going to interact with that person on a connection level. This cultural specialist, I've had conversation with him, and he has mentioned that he can use a little support, which in sense of he does hear from our students. He hears from them. They come to him. He transfers their issues or their concerns to whomever. To me, having that person gone will be a total detriment, again, as I said, because he has built a relationship with these kids. They will feel betrayed. I understand that we want to respect the principal, but I'll go back and I'll say it again, but what about our students? Have we talked to them? Have we even asked them what do they want? No, of course not. And that frustrates me because we're supposed to be a voice for our students, for our community members, and too often I feel like we're not a voice for our students or our community members. I feel like we're a voice for admin if necessary. Forgive me if I'm being direct and a little disrespectful, but I'm not trying to be. I think we got to consider our students' voices. Maybe have them speak. Would they want to see the cultural specialist gone? Guarantee you they wouldn't. Would they want to see another principal? Guarantee they wouldn't. Because there's another person to hold them accountable to add, not even necessarily a good thing. Because a lot of times from what I hear, the students I talk to, principals are not kind. I just saw an email. I mean, I shouldn't mention that because it's not public, I don't believe. But I hear things, and it's not always principals are responding in a way that's person-centered to our students, as in on their level. This person, this individual is person-centered. Again, I saw him. I was with him. I walked with him. He's a fast walker. He's loved by many kids. They know him. So I would say utilize that power that he has. He's able to connect. He can hear things and share things that our students are dealing with that no principal is going to be able to have. Utilize that. Again, let's be student-centered and not necessarily go off of everything. Again, the principal, I get it. I respect his position, but let's be mindful who we're serving. We're serving these kids. If there was no kids, there would be no board. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Ms. Cormier?
I just wanted to clarify, so I feel like we're using a few different terms. So 3 assistant principals, 1 acting principal, and then 1 associate principal?
Yes.
That's the, okay. And then the associate principal position, since we're adding this position, is this something that we need to post, or is this something that just?
We would post.
Okay. And so I don't know if you guys already got a job description in finance? Okay.
We have to get the budget passed first.
Well, yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, okay. Can't post anything, do we have money?
Thank you.
Any further deliberation on the motion? I'm going to move the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Austin?
Yes.
Ms. Chisholm?
No.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Ms. Moran?
No.
Ms. Wetzel?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes, that motion passes. Cultural specialist is added back in the budget.
Okay, so just to make a motion, that's only 65,000, put it back in.
1 position, right?
Yes, 1 position, 65,000.
So Alex, do your numbers and we'll see where we are.
6.65%.
Thank you. Okay.
Good boy.
Anticipating the question.
Already.
That's why he makes a big
Budget, right?
Yeah, we're still in the budget.
Just also during finance, Mr. Alex brought up, and the administration brought up the restructuring of the tech department. I don't know who would like to address that from the admin side of things. We had a tech director. That person's leaving. We have a new arrangement with the tech department. I don't know who wants to address it, perhaps.
Sure.
And the money, associated money is around it.
Yeah. So the tech director recently resigned, so we restructured the tech department. The easiest way that I can think about explaining it is dividing the technology into 2 different silos, if you will. One is hardware, so all of the devices, cameras, et cetera, and having someone be the assistant director of hardware, if you will. And then on the other side of the technology aisle is software. So all of the Power School registration, data accountability, and have somebody be the assistant director of that side of the aisle. And so that restructure, that conversation's been had, that restructure's been had, and so, you want, what else?
That's fine, Dr. Valley. Just another example of how, your departments went through the books and kind of figured things out. People are leaving, and you could have just, again, advertised for a new tech director and start out with a whole new person doing roles and responsibilities, but you took some of the lead people in that department and kind of co-chaired it and kind of co-ran that department. I guess since the mayor's sitting here and we have the superintendent, not really on the budget, but just capital improvements. I know the mayor's been very generous to the firefighters. We had meetings recently for another station. Capital improvements for the school department. I know you have a list. Anything in the top of your head you might think of tonight, Mr. Mayor? Or?
Well, as we're doing with every department in the city, as they submit their proposed FY26 operating budget, they'll also submit their FY26 proposed capital budget. So we have items that are on the revolving year-to-year list, but we expect that will be updated this year, and we'll take a close look at that in collaboration with the school committee on which to implement and which not to.
Okay, just, clarify, there's nothing in here, so if anybody went to the website and looked it up, there's nothing for capital improvements. We do a little bit different now. We establish a list, it goes to the mayor, and they prioritize the needs as needed. So I just want to make sure that the public's aware of that situation, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
We'll
Thank you,
take
Madam
3
Chair.
schools.
I'm sorry?
3 schools.
Three? Only 3?
I mean, if you're willing to bargain.
We'll start with 3, but we'll take 2 if necessary.
Anything else on the budget, Mr.
Just
Lipset?
one more, and Mr. Moran's question regarding tech, I think dovetails well with the other addition that I think I'd like to just sort of have admin explain and talk a little bit about, which is the assistant superintendent position.
Sure. So, one of the decisions that we made, or I made, is to not backfill the director of technology position for next year, and instead go back to an ask that was made a couple months ago, which was an assistant superintendent for finance and operations, someone to oversee technology, human resources. Alex does a great job, but he, to oversee finance, to be a resource to Alex, that could become engaged in upcoming negotiations. And I think that one of the things that I can't speak for anyone else, but I know people in the room.
Are you looking at me?
When we do the budget, and we've said in the past that the being a classroom teacher is more challenging than ever before. Being a superintendent is more challenging than ever before. The asks on anyone in public education is more challenging than it's ever been before. And when I think about this position, I think about standard 2, the management and operations standard. I spend a great deal of my time in standard 2, when I really feel like I should be spending a great deal of time on standard 1, which is instruction, or standard 3, family community engagement, standard 4, professional practice. So I think it's an opportunity to add a position that I think we need. I think it will take some of the things off of my plate that will allow me to be out in schools more. We've talked about this a couple times tonight. The mayor and I do Fridays, have been visiting schools. Some of you have done this visit as well. I would prefer to be out in schools every day and be visible and available to staff. And again, I find myself in Standard 2 quite a bit, which is the management and operations, and I think the opportunity, because of the restructure, presented itself, and I think there's a need, and I don't know if you want to weigh in.
I will add to this, actually. And, I always like to sort of look out, and I see Barbara out in the audience. And Barbara used to often say to me, "You're not in the classrooms enough." And one of the things that I will say today is, I'm not. I can't get there. And it does impact the ability for me to do my job and to do it well. I have an early childhood, a preschool teacher that has been trying to get on my calendar for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And I've tried to catch her at 9 o'clock at night here and there, and there are people that need to be able to reach us and that need more immediate responses to things. And we're stretched very, very thin. And I think that when you look at all of the operational aspects, the personnel issues that we are trying to navigate, when you think about a North Woburn school that we may be looking at in the future, or any building project in the future, the redistricting, there are so many different components, and I think the reality is we are very, very bogged down with the number of issues, whether it's legal issues or student issues or emergencies or supporting our building principals, that we're truly going all day. And I truly don't believe that I am giving my teachers and paraprofessionals the time that they need, and I'm not getting in their rooms enough. And it is a problem, and it is something that really weighs on me, and we are stretched that thin. And I agree with Barbara in the sense that it does make a difference. And one of the things, and I know my dissertation that was recently done, I worked with a lot of teachers, and the number one thing that I heard was, get into my classroom. And we need more time, and we don't have it because the needs of the district are significant. And we end up, trying to triage constantly, so that's sort of why I would advocate for this position.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Ryan.
Samantha.
Appreciate transparency. Mr. Lipsett,
Just
Jeff Follow-up.
to sort of add to that, I've been reflecting on this position since our finance subcommittee meeting, and I voiced my support for it there, and I continue that. And one of the reasons for that is, as I look back over my years on this committee, I think about our previous budgets, and I think about the number of student-facing positions that we have been able to add. Just last year's budget alone was a monumental add in terms of student-facing positions. All of them deeply, deeply necessary. They have had an immediate effect, and that has been profound. But even beyond last year's budget, we have seen budget after budget where we've added fairly significantly in terms of student-facing staff, and especially staff that are addressing the needs of vulnerable populations. That is special education, that is multilingual learners, staff supports, student supports. We actually have not, in fact, in this budget alone, right, we are reducing by one curriculum coordinator position. We are reducing tech directors. So we are actually, at the moment, on a net negative in terms of admin positions. And I think broadly over my time, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that we were either neutral on central office admin or pretty close to neutral. And so I think, as the district has grown in complexity, as the district has grown in staff needs, as the district has grown in student needs, I think it warrants this position. We have had an assistant superintendent of finance and operations in the past. That position has morphed. It's lost some of its responsibilities. I think that it's beneficial to look at bringing it back, especially given some of the adjustments that open up a path. So.
Thank you, Mr. Lipsett.
Ms. Wetzel?
I think just on that note, we're looking at forward thinking, like MSBA funding. I feel this person would be a great asset to have on our team as we're doing that. And then just credit to Miss Ryan, or Dr. Ryan, excuse me. My middle daughter figure skates, actually my younger two, but that's beside the point. I see her at the ice rink often, and she's always on her computer or on a phone call, and I'm talking late into the evening. So I know how hard all of you work, so thank you. And speaking with Dr. Crowley, our school of our size typically has more superintendents and assistant superintendents if you look at other states or schools in the Commonwealth. So I think it's time that we do the same.
Thank you, Ms. Wetzel. Okay, anything else on the budget? Mr. Mayor, would you like to add any questions or anything else? I don't want to leave you literally in the dark.
I enjoyed the discussion. What I would say, I just reiterate or remind that this is a process, and you're going through your process. I respect that. I respect the outcome of your process, and it will go into the process where there'll be some more of this that happens with you, and at some point perhaps even not how you'd like it to go, potentially. And I would say the same to the police chief, and the fire chief, and the DPW superintendent, and the library director. There's a chance it may not go exactly the way you want once we get this whole thing together. But this is the way it's supposed to work. And I appreciate and respect that you're following the process, and we'll let it play out.
Yeah, and I'll just, on behalf of the committee, I'll just reiterate that I think the committee feels like the lemon has been squeezed as much as possible, and if we squeeze in anything more, then we are looking into programs and people. So I know you know that, but that would be the committee's position. But we hear the city's position loud and clear, and that's why I appreciate you coming tonight. And I ignored Mr. Mulrennan, so.
No, I'm just going to bring up another, as Mr. Lipsett brought up, just new ads here. If the administration would like to discuss the central registrar and the staff and the development of that position as well. I don't know who's wants to take that ball.
I don't know if it's also worth mentioning, because I know we brushed over it earlier in the budget, but we're talking about kind of the recent parts, the additional ads, and I don't know, Maureen, if you want to go through those too, but and I'm just making sure I have the right tab open. But we're adding 2 additional content specialists at the elementary level based off of supporting the implementation of new math programming. We're adding, this budget adds additional elementary interventionists so that we can be providing intervention not only for literacy but also for math at the elementary level. And that was accomplished through the reduction in the curriculum line because of capital funding that we were provided for the math program that we didn't need to then have in the curriculum supply budget line. We were able to make the reduction to then offset the cost of all the additional interventionist support that will be provided at the elementary level. The budget has the building substitutes are part of this budget, and then there's additional. So I just feel like we're talking about the recent, but there's a lot that were added in the very beginning.
There's a RISE teacher, paraprofessionals. There's an additional nurse at the Reeves to support that building as well with some of the higher medical needs that they've seen.
It took me a second to bring them back.
Yes.
But also we're looking at enrollment, elementary classroom enrollment, which is classroom teachers that are being added. However, it's a bit of a puzzle at the moment until you all vote on May 5th with redistricting of where those are going to land, but there is an additional classrooms that are added. But in terms of the registration component, again, we've talked a lot about this, and I think that one of the big parts that we've talked about through the redistricting process, especially as we're looking at a phased redistricting and the need to be considering kind of the gray area space potentially and kind of the needs that we're going to have over the next few years around a phased redistrict is around the need for central registration. And so this is including a central registration as well as an additional, we're right now calling it FACE staff because that's the current title in which we use for staff which are supporting registration. What that looks like as built out, is certainly through looking at, to Colleen's point around like the job description itself, but it's two staff members whose role will be around registration, supporting with registration and enrollment, which happens all year long.
I would add to the registration, that's really, the funding that we get comes in from having students properly registered. And that is something that I honestly believe it is very short money for what the return will be. And I think that it also will take a significant amount of burden off of at the building level. I think that there's often a lot of confusion and time taken up when families are trying to register, and our secretaries are in a lot of different directions. And I think this will help out just a lot of people and bring in a significant amount of, it will bring in funding because of the accuracy of the data that we can then turn around and report.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right.
Well said, Mr. Madam
Okay,
Chair.
is there any other questions on the budget? Is there any?
There's
Dr.
actually
Ryan.
one more position.
I found the tab.
Yes, I forgot, a clinical psychologist is added to the high school. The high school has a therapeutic program that has a large number of students. The program is very successful. I think that the high school has done a really, really nice job at integrating this program into the community. It's only a couple of years. Has only been in place for a couple of years now, but it's very successful, and I credit a lot of the staff at the high school for being as welcoming as they are and helping the students to belong. And the clinical needs are greater than what the current staff can manage, and that's another example of students that are staying in district that could otherwise be out of district.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Ms. Cormier.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask, if I could, Mr. Mayor, tangentially related to the budget and Mr. Mulrennan's question about capital. I was curious where you stand with the idea of the modulars that we had brought up before, we had brought before City Council. Do you have any thoughts at this time as far as, do you feel like there is any chance that these could happen? I know, I believe NASET still has them for the time being, and again, as I said last week, I feel like this is such a good investment for the district and basically built you a school for $5 million, thereabouts. So I was curious if you had any thoughts at this time.
Sure. I do have thoughts on the modulars. I have been involved in the discussions. I've talked with many of you. We've talked collectively as well. In a nutshell, my thoughts on the modulars are, I still have too many questions about exactly how it would work, where they would go, how much it would cost. Have we considered all the ramifications of the cost, including site prep, et cetera? Until I had all of those questions answered, I could not support an appropriation of $5 million to do that. I'd have to be confident in the makeup of the $5 million amount. I thought it was actually a good idea when the school committee went to the city council and had that back and forth, the Q&A, the presentation, the questions. I found that to advance the discussion, but not to the point yet where I felt we had enough answers that I could have supported it. I think if we can get more of those questions answered with confidence and solid answers, I could probably give you a better answer and be closer to having an opinion. But at this point, I don't have enough information to come down on either side.
So I'm not sure how it works. I would assume it would come from you, but if, for instance, Mr. Viola had asked if we had sent down the building inspector to inspect these, and I don't think that comes from us. I think that would come from your office. Would that be something that you would ask the inspector to do, and do you have an appetite for that? I guess. To see if they are, I think it was structurally sound was the question.
I think I'd certainly be willing to have a conversation with him about whether he thought that was helpful, whether he had the skills and experience and background to render an opinion that was useful.
Sure.
And then go from there. But if he said to me, that's out of my league, that's not something I'm really able to give you the information you need to make an informed decision, then I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
But I'd certainly have the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the other options would be.
I know at one
Who else
point-
would be,
I think I was at one of the meetings, and I think it was Mr. Burnham had suggested that there was at least an option to hire somebody to do an overall assessment of the plan, which would include the structural stability of these modulars, the lifespan, what would actually be getting, what it would look like to transport them, what rough estimates it might cost, where we might best locate them, what would the site prep cost be of that. If there was an entity that could give us all of those answers, I'd read that report.
Yeah. And so that would, I think that was what was discussed, I think about a $30,000 cost in that, and I guess widely to everyone. I'm not sure how that, is that something that we would make a motion? Where does that money come from, I guess? Is that, I don't know that anybody has any extra change in their pockets this year, but
We don't have the funding for that, so, I mean, it would have to come, again, from the city. So,
Well, I think to answer that, we're at the 75% way through the fiscal year budget. I am expecting that most departments in the city, as they wrap up their fiscal year, are likely to have a little bit of money left over in their budget because we conservatively budget. I wouldn't be surprised if the school committee and the school department, as they wrap up fiscal year '25, might actually have $30,000 available and not necessarily have to come to the city for that request. I don't know that for certain, but I think it's a reasonable expectation that there might actually be $30,000 left over in the school department budget come the end of the year. I don't know that yet.
I'm not on the finance subcommittee, so I haven't seen the sort of aging at this point. I know there were the ads that we've discussed too, the post-7-1 ads that I think would also kind of hit that, so I wasn't really sure.
I mean,
where
if
we
it was
stood.
$3 million, I'd say I do not expect you to probably have that. Maybe not even 300,000. Perhaps you would, we'll see. But 30,000, I wouldn't rule it out that it might be somewhere in your budget before you come and ask the city for that.
it would just be a lot of money to spend for something that we wouldn't have city approval on yet, that's all,
But it's a way to get the information that might lead to city approval. Might.
I guess my thought was, people were saying, well, why didn't you do this study yet? And I felt like, at the same time, some people would say, why would you spend that money without getting any kind of indication from the city that they would want to support this? So I can see both,
Yeah, I think the support from the city, and I don't want to speak for the city council, they can speak for themselves, but I think the support is driven by solid information that gives us options, and they're informed options. It's hard to say, yes, we think you should do that, until we know what that really looks like. And I think we may have to get some more information to be able to make that informed decision. And that's kind of what I heard when I watched that city council meeting. That was the back and forth I observed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cormier.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Lipset?
I
looks
feel like
you're-
at this point, we should talk about a motion to send this budget to public hearing. I'll rescind that.
JK. I would just like to see if I can, I'll make a motion that we add $25,000 back into the legal line. I just think with negotiations beginning, I don't think we can afford to take the $50,000 cut. So I would just make that, the reduction be for $25,000 instead of $50,000.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Because I just think with negotiations, we're going to need more on the legal line, and that was just,
Maybe not.
but,
Maybe not.
yeah. But I just don't want to cut ourselves short, so so that's my motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to add in $25,000 back into the budget for legal. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, Alex, now where are we?
6.68%.
Thank you.
Okay, so I believe that Mr. Lipset was going to suggest moving a question.
I will make a motion to send a budget with an increase year over year of 6.68% to public hearing.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
That
Aye.
motion passes. Let's talk about when the budget hearing shall be held. We have a meeting on the books for April 30th, 2025. Is that a acceptable date to hold the public hearing on the fiscal year 26 budget? I'm
think
seeing
so.
nods, seeing consensus. Okay.
That's fine.
Vice Chair Chisholm, you will have to preside over that meeting that night. I will.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Vice Chair Chisholm,
That's
you
okay.
have the right to be
I-
the chair of that meeting. If
I
you
will
wish
be
to
honored.
refuse, you can. we
It'll be a
can-
short meeting.
We're hoping.
We've been warned. Okay, and Mr. Mayor, would you like to add anything to the discussion or closing remarks of any kind?
Just I appreciate your hard work. I know you guys,
Thank you.
the whole team has worked to get to this point, and I ask for and would appreciate your continued support as the process plays out, and understand that, we have to do what's best for the entire city, and there's a lot of factors, and as you've described them, moving parts, but I have heard you, and we'll take all of this into consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you being here and observing our deliberations and being a part of it. It means a lot to us
Thank you.
going forward. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to schedule the public hearing on April 30th, 2025. That means, Ms. McLeod, I want to thank you for all the work that you do for Administration Day. Administrative.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. That means that we need to make a public notice of our hearing on April 23rd, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, awesome, great.
Will do.
So we'll circulate that into, will you publish it in the paper?
Yes.
Old school? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll be making that public announcement, and we'll also be publishing our budget 48 hours before the public hearing at various places, online and at the library, in the science fiction section. I make the joke every year.
And we love it every year.
It is, it's so good.
At least you don't say the fantasy section.
Yeah. All the mysteries.
Okay.
All the mystery.
The next item on the agenda is future agenda items. I stole a lot of it to discuss our public hearing. Is there anything else that the committee would like to see on any future agenda item? Yes,
If I
Mr.
may, Madam
Morenon.
Chair, I know you've received a couple of emails that have been forwarded to us, and we get emails before them to you as well regarding the student risk survey. Just get that on the agenda unless it's news tonight or not, but get that on the agenda as soon as possible. Redistricting, obviously, and the budget is all I have for tonight's future agenda items.
Thank you, Ms. Morenon. I think
Madam
those
Chair.
are going to be on the budget agenda anyways. Ms.
If I
Lipset.
could ask, Ms. Young and I had a conversation before the meeting. This might be a good topic for the curriculum subcommittee meeting.
Yes. I will
discuss
refer the
that.
youth risk behavior survey to curriculum to, I believe, to hone in on some of the questions and really just look at it as a whole?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
We'll
thank
take
you.
care of it.
Okay. And then you can raise the full committee
Yes,
after.
absolutely.
Good
Thank you.
discussion. Okay. Anything else on future agenda items?
Yes,
Mr.
I would,
Austin?
I would love to maybe have an invite sent to Mr. G, the culture specialist. I would love for him to come before us to let us know what he does, get a chance to officially meet him, and speak of all the good things he does. I would love to see that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Austin. Ms. Wetzel?
I think it would be great to invite the curriculum coordinators as well, so the community can learn
coordinators?
more about what they do and the asset they provide to our team. And then the other, not a future agenda item, but more of a question, May 5th, I know we have our meeting at the 30th. Are we also having a meeting May 5th? Because I know that's not currently on our calendar.
So thank you, Ms. Wetzel.
Yep.
May 5th will be the vote on the redistricting. I'm moving that to May 5th to hold the public hearing on the budget on the 30th, and because I will not be available in person on the 30th. So we will have our redistricting vote on May 5th. Okay?
Gives more time after the forums. to
Yes, and
absorb.
to digest the information from the forums, and it's just a lot more smoother time frame.
Yeah, and that was direct from community feedback as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Wetzel. Excellent point. Okay. Dr. Crowley?
Potential future agenda item, if you're
Yes.
interested. The high school math and science teams have done
Oh,
really
yeah,
well.
they-
Yes.
And I think it would be an opportunity for them to come and talk about their success. So if
Yes.
you want, I can reach out to see about availability for that.
That would be great.
Yes. Thank you. That was on my,
As
those
well
are my
as some of
notes.
the track team members.
Track
the
team.
Nationals and, you know, they happened to meet today.
Track team. Math and science, curriculum coordinators, cultural specialists. Okay.
Another add-on. I would love to,
course.
I would love to see or hear more from the peer specialists, not peer specialists, I'm sorry. What's the title at the high school? The young
Mentors?
Peer mediators, yes. I don't know who a peer specialist is, but the peer mediators. I got a chance to speak to a couple of peer mediators, and it was kind of giving me the rundown of how to get elected and what they do, and I think what they do is really great. I think it's an asset, and I would love to I don't know who can come before us, maybe students, maybe someone that oversees, or however. I would love to see that on the agenda.
How about a general presentation on the peer mediation program?
Yes.
Great. Well, that was a robust discussion about future agenda items. Thank you, committee members. Anything else? Okay. The committee absolutely has executive session tonight. I will accept a motion to move into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, because I have determined that an open meeting will detrimentally affect the bargaining or litigating position of the public body.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Austin?
Yes.
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Ms. Moreno?
Yes.
Ms. Wetzel?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes. We'll move into executive session for the purposes as stated.